All right, I think we're live. Not sure, though.
All right.
Internet's wonky. Here we go. 1, 2, 3. Hi, everybody. Welcome back to RVAsec 2022. Richmond, Virginia. Chuck Harold, SecurityGuideTV.com. My next guest, what's your name, sir?
My name is Bryan Carnahan.
And what's the name of your company?
Our company is Assura.
And website?
AssuraInc.com.
Oh, AssuraInc.com. Okay, very good. Now, we're going to talk about response and what you guys do. Tell us what you guys do first, and we're going to get into the response part.
Sure. So we offer a number of different services on both the governance, risk, and compliance, as well as in the managed services on the tech side as well. And specifically when it comes to response, I wanted to speak with a security guy today to discuss incident response plans and how you can use those within your organization.
Now, I didn't tell you this, but I was a policeman for a long time.
Oh, yeah?
And I'm all about governance and rules and responding.
Yeah.
That's what I did, right?
Yeah.
You know? So I get this part. I find in cybersecurity and in physical security where I come from, it's a little lacking. Here's why. I can put a policy together and a plan together. I can practice it. But when everything goes to caca,
Everything kind of falls apart.
it doesn't work. I
Yeah.
mean, but you do have to have it, because if you don't have some framework, it's a complete fail, right? At least you can follow it. So tell us how you guys handle this, because this is super critical.
Yeah, I mean, to go with what you're saying about your background with being in law enforcement, it really does come back to that training. And when you're in a situation where stuff does hit the fan, having that be rigid, that you're trained on the plan, how do you activate the plan, how do you move forward?
Right.
That's the best way to make sure that your staff are able to respond in the appropriate manner. And really, what do we do when an incident occurs? Do we jump right in, or do we start going about the most important option, communication? How do we find the people who are the right staff to respond? How do we tell leadership what's going on? What can they expect? How long are we going to be down? What's being affected? All of this is important. Just as important as, hey, we got to get the fire extinguisher out and start putting things out.
Well, it's almost more important, because maybe you don't want to put the fire out, because that creates another problem.
Yeah.
Right, so you have to evaluate all that stuff. Come back. You're falling on the camera there.
Oh, sorry. Leaning back there, guys.
All right, now, tell me what the number one issue your clients bring up nowadays.
Oh, it's always ransomware. Whenever people are terrified of
I know, but it's an easy answer. But
I know. It's an easy answer, because when people are concerned, it really comes back to what their leadership are telling them to worry about, right? And so when your leadership is looking at the news of what's going to affect us, what do we need to be afraid of, ransomware is what comes to mind, because they're worried about not being down for a few hours, even though that is something that's a lot more common with incidents. They're worried about, oh God, are we going to be down for days, weeks, or extended period? And that's something that can kill the business versus something that can disrupt the business.
That's true, and I have heard this week that a bigger concern and a bigger money loss is just malicious email. Not ransomware per se, but the scamming, right? So
death by 1,000 cuts. I mean, it's a completely different idea, right?
And you lose, the industry's lost billions and billions of dollars, where ransomware is hundreds of millions.
I think you're completely right.
Yeah.
I think it's
not as sexy, though. It's not as fun as ransomware.
No, it's not as sexy. It's not directly it does affect your reputation, but not as much of a high impact.
Right.
But you're completely right that each of those incidents, you're talking about the cost of a data breach. We've lost this data. What are we paying in GDPR? What are we paying in HIPAA? These all, when you lose a record and the cost of losing that record, it adds up very quickly, especially when you're dealing in the tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands, or millions of records. Yeah. So you're completely right. I like to think of it, again, that death by 1,000 cuts idea versus the big, flashy, sexy, oh God, everything's down. But you really, it's all about communicating, to your executives, what are they afraid about? What are we trying to do to resolve those fears? But what are you also trying to fix in the background that may be a little bit above their head, or maybe, again, isn't as sexy?
Did you hear about that denial of service attack a couple days ago, the new one?
Yeah.
So they used, I don't understand it, my brain's not as big as yours, but they used virtual machines instead of maybe my machine here at the desk, and they were able to create a, multiply faster denial of service attack than using traditional methods. It's like,
oh, interesting.
Yeah, it's something like,
I actually hadn't heard of this one.
Oh no, you got to look at it. It was like 2 days ago. So if they could send out 10 million emails a second, this one could send out 200 emails a second.
Incredible.
It was like exponentially larger. Now somebody caught it. I can't remember which company kind of slowed it down and caught it, but we are leaping into science fiction. We're there, really, right? How do we get ahead of that? I mean, I was a black hat a couple years ago, and I talked to companies. I said, what do you do? Well, we sit around and we think about what a bad guy could do 30 years from now that can't be done now, and we try to solve what we can for it now.
Right.
So we're ready.
Yeah.
So this is all about a response.
Yeah, it really is.
So tell me what we're doing to look at things that aren't plausible now, but are close to being plausible?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. And I think that it's all about making sure that some part of your business is always looking at the cutting edge. And so, like,
there you go. Okay.
Yeah, and in our sense that we really think about, and you may have this with penetration testing or red team, but you're having people who are looking at the vulnerabilities that are out there, seeing how they can exploit them, and also looking for new vulnerabilities, new threats that haven't been thought about before, just like you're saying. And then when you identify those, how do we give back to the community? How do we say, oh, let's communicate out and make sure that people are aware of this so that they don't fall for this, or that it may already have been exploited for a long while, just hasn't been identified yet. Getting that out there. We do Assura Cyber Heads Up on a regular basis because we do have our own red team as well as penetration team, and they're out there looking for different ways of getting into both our clients and ourselves. And when we find one of those paths, the first thing we need to do is, okay, how do we communicate that out? How do we make sure that this can't be exploited by the other side?
So, in a response model, is there a decision maker in, let's say, a police response, tactical response? The SWAT commander says go, stop. Somebody has to lead it.
Right.
I don't feel that same way about a cyber response. There's too many moving parts to it. But if you don't have somebody kind of guiding the strategy and the tactics,
I'll tell you from my experience, I do think that it's important to have an incident response team leader. And the reason, but like you're saying, there's so much going on.
Yeah.
But there needs to be someone who can maintain that battle rhythm throughout an incident. There needs to be someone who's saying, here's where we were, here's where you need to go, here's where you need to go, here's where you need to go. Come back in 30 minutes, what did we accomplish? And you keep that going. And it's all about, and that person may be the one who's responsible for talking to leadership. Hey, this is what we need to be going, this is where we're at, here's how we're going. That might be the person who's calling insurance. That might be the person who's talking to the departments. While your staff are the ones who are getting the problem solved.
They're the tactic response, yeah.
Tactics versus strategy, right? So I do think that the leader is important. It's just not as direct as like maybe a SWAT leader would be in that situation.
Okay.
It's more of just, hey, can we maintain that battle rhythm of how are we responding to this incident? Because we're going to be in this cycle of analysis, containment, eradication until we're sure that we can move towards recovery, right?
How much automation do you build into this, cook into it?
I think automation is important. The main things with automation are in that detection and analysis phase, right? But then you're going to have folks who are actually responding to alerts, identifying, hey, is this a false positive or is this real?
Right.
And then once you've identified what kind of threat is in your environment and what's being exploited, how do we see that across, tens of thousands of assets versus we just found it in this one localized location? Because we want to make sure we're okay and we've checked that box of full containment. So there is a fair amount of automation to assist, your tech folks who are going out and doing a lot of the heavy lifting for sure.
Good conversation, my friend, Mr. Bryan. Give us your company website.
AssuraInc.com.
Excellent. Back in a minute here at RVAsec 2022, Richmond, Virginia.
Thank you, sir.
Good chat, my friend. Good to meet you.